Margaret sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the clock ticking louder than usual. The TV was off, the phone hadn't rung in days, and the silence felt heavier than ever. She glanced at the old photo frames on the shelf. Memories frozen in time, smiles that once lit up her days. A strange question crept into her mind. How did life end up like this? Earlier that morning, she had struggled to get out of bed. Her knees ached in a way they never had before. It wasn't just pain, it was a reminder. A whisper from her body that things were changing. Slower steps, fewer phone calls, more quiet afternoons that bled into lonely evenings. But what if it wasn't just aging? What if the loneliness, the stiffness, the financial worries weren't inevitable? What if they were the result of small, invisible choices she had made without even noticing? Like skipping a morning walk, ignoring a friend's invitation, telling herself, "I'm too old for that now." Margaret wasn't alone in this. Many people drift into these quiet struggles, believing it's just part of getting older. But the truth is more unsettling and more hopeful. What if these hardships could have been avoided? What if growing older didn't have to mean growing lonelier, weaker, or more forgotten? She looked out the window, watching the wind stir the leaves. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of thought rose. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe I can still change the story. Mistake 1. Neglecting physical health. Margaret had always been active. In her younger days, she was the type to wake up before sunrise, slip on her walking shoes, and head out for a brisk stroll around the neighborhood. She loved gardening, cooking fresh meals, and dancing in the kitchen while humming to the radio. But somewhere along the way, after retirement and the quiet that followed, those routines faded. It's just age, she told herself when her knees ached in the morning. When the weather felt too chilly for a walk, she skipped it. When grocery shopping felt like too much effort, she ordered takeout instead. One skipped walk turned into a week. One microwave dinner became the norm. Her annual checkup? Postponed. Again. "I'll go next month," she whispered every time she glanced at the calendar. 6 months later, it caught up with her. One sunny afternoon, Margaret decided to take a short walk to the mailbox. Just a few steps down the driveway, but as she stepped off the curb, her foot slipped. She fell hard onto the pavement. Nothing was broken, but she sat there, stunned, more by fear than pain. Her legs trembled, her confidence shattered. That fall was her wake-up call. She realized her body wasn't failing her. It was simply responding to neglect. The strength she'd once taken for granted had slowly faded, not because of age, but because of inactivity. Margaret started small. A 10-minute walk after breakfast, gentle stretches before bed, a YouTube video on chair exercises. She swapped sugary snacks for fruits, added more protein to her meals, and made sure to drink water throughout the day. Little by little, she felt herself coming back to life. Her legs steadied, her energy lifted. She even caught herself humming in the kitchen again. Margaret's story is a reminder. Growing older doesn't mean giving up. Your body is like a house. It needs maintenance, and even the smallest effort can rebuild what was lost. Mistake 2. Isolating from friends and family. After her husband passed, Margaret's world got quiet. Too quiet. At first, she welcomed the stillness. No more hospital visits, no more long nights of worry. Just her, the house, and her memories. She stopped going to church, skipped her weekly coffee meetups, and let her phone sit silent on the kitchen counter, unanswered. "Everyone's busy," she'd say. "I don't want to bother them." Days turned into weeks, and the silence grew heavier. The TV filled the space where laughter used to be. Her daughter's calls came less often, and when they did, Margaret kept the conversations short. She told herself it was fine, she was just tired. But beneath that, something deeper was happening. The sparkle in her eyes faded. Her appetite waned. Sleep became restless, and mornings felt like something to endure, not embrace. She began to feel invisible. Then one afternoon, while standing in the grocery store checkout line, She noticed a flyer on the bulletin board. Local book club, new members welcome. For reasons she couldn't explain, Margaret tore it down and slipped it into her purse. That following Thursday, heart pounding, she walked into the community center. She didn't know anyone. Her voice trembled when she introduced herself. But by the end of the hour, she had laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. Someone complimented her glasses. Another asked what book she wanted to read next. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. That book club became her lifeline. Margaret began calling her old college roommate again. She invited her grandkids over for brunch. She even taught her young neighbor how to knit. The more she reconnected, the more alive she felt. Her memory sharpened. Her mood lifted. The loneliness began to melt away. Isolation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just a slow fading of connection. But just like the body, the heart and mind need company to stay strong. One conversation, one visit, one hello can change everything. Mistake 3. Refusing to adapt to change. Margaret never needed much from technology. She liked her rotary phone, paid her bills at the post office, and kept her recipes scribbled on index cards, just the way her mother did. When her granddaughter gifted her a smartphone for Christmas, she smiled politely, thanked her with a hug, and left it in the box, untouched in a drawer. "I've done just fine without all that," she told herself. But the world didn't wait. Her doctor's office switched to an online system. Her church group started organizing events through group texts. Her grandkids were sharing photos in family chats she couldn't access. She missed birthday messages, appointment reminders, and even a scam alert that could have saved her from a suspicious phone call she later fell for. The worst part? She didn't even know how disconnected she had become. Until the day she found herself alone in a grocery aisle, squinting at a long shopping list and unable to reach her daughter for help. The old flip phone she carried had no signal, and no one nearby could assist. Frustrated and on the verge of tears, she went home empty-handed. That night, Margaret made a decision. She pulled the smartphone out of the drawer and asked her granddaughter Emma to come over. Emma sat patiently, showing her how to make video calls, send texts, check the weather, and even order groceries online. Margaret fumbled at first, accidentally calling people at odd hours and sending emojis she didn't understand. But she kept trying. Within a few weeks, things changed. She joined her church's online prayer circle. She received real-time updates from her doctor. She even started video chatting with her niece in Canada every Sunday. Margaret still reads her morning paper and writes notes in her planner, but now she also uses her phone to protect her identity, stay in touch, and feel part of the world again. Change isn't easy, but refusing it makes life harder. Embracing new tools doesn't mean abandoning the old. It means staying open, connected, and safe in a world that won't stop evolving. Mistake 4. Mismanaging finances. When Margaret first retired, it felt like freedom. No alarm clocks, no rush hour traffic, no more worrying about deadlines. She had her pension, a modest savings account, and a house that was finally paid off. For the first time in decades, she could spend money without guilt. So she did. Weekend getaways, new furniture, fancy dinners with friends. She said yes to everything. "I've earned this," she told herself as she treated her grandchildren to new bikes and ballet lessons. And she had. But she wasn't keeping track. Then came the unexpected. Her roof started leaking after a harsh winter. Medical bills piled up when her arthritis worsened. Grocery prices soared. Insurance premiums rose. Suddenly, Margaret was dipping into her savings just to stay afloat. She started using her credit card more often, first for little things, then for big ones. One day, she opened her bank app and felt her stomach drop. The cushion she once had was now just a thin thread. Pride kept her quiet at first. She didn't want her family to worry, but the stress crept into her sleep, her mood, and eventually her health. When her power bill went unpaid one month, she finally broke down and called her son. That call changed everything. Together, they sat down and reviewed her finances. They made a budget, simple, clear, manageable. They cut out a few unnecessary subscriptions, shopped smarter, and looked into long-term care options. Her son helped her set up alerts for scams and reviewed her insurance policies. For the first time in years, Margaret felt in control again. She learned that managing money in retirement isn't about being frugal. It's about protecting freedom. About making sure you don't have to depend on others unless you choose to. About sleeping peacefully, knowing your future is secure. Financial independence doesn't end with retirement. In many ways, it begins there. And even small changes can make a big difference when every dollar starts to count. Mistake 5. Ignoring mental growth and losing purpose. For the first few months after retirement, Margaret thought she'd enjoy the peace. No deadlines, no alarms, no obligations. But soon, the days began to blur together. Morning coffee led to long afternoons in front of the television. She'd forget what day it was, why she walked into a room, or where she left her keys. It wasn't just forgetfulness, it was emptiness. She missed being needed. Missed the satisfaction of checking something off a to-do list, the joy of learning something new, the simple feeling of waking up with a reason to get out of bed. Maybe this is just what getting old feels like, she thought. But deep down, something felt wrong. She wasn't sick. She wasn't in pain. She just felt invisible. One rainy afternoon, she passed by the local community center and noticed a flyer taped to the window. Intro to Watercolor. Beginner's welcome. Age 60 plus. She stared at it for a long time. Margaret had never painted in her life, but something in her stirred. The next morning, she signed up. The first class was awkward. Her brush wobbled. The colors ran together. She didn't know anyone. But by the second week, she was laughing with the woman beside her. By the third, she started painting at home. By the fourth, she woke up excited for class. Her mind felt sharper. Her heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, she felt proud of something again. Margaret didn't just find a hobby, she found herself. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It can be a small project, a weekly volunteer shift, mentoring someone younger, or simply learning something new. It's not about staying busy, it's about staying alive. The brain, like the body, needs exercise. Without it, it dulls. With it, it flourishes. No matter your age, your life still has meaning. And it's never too late to rediscover what lights you up inside. Conclusion. Margaret stood at her kitchen window, a warm cup of tea in hand, watching the sunlight dance through the trees. Something had shifted. The days that once felt heavy now carried a quiet energy. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had started choosing herself again. She was walking every morning, just 15 minutes, but enough to feel her legs grow steadier. She had reconnected with old friends and even made new ones at her book club. Her smartphone no longer intimidated her. It helped her feel part of the world again. She had a budget, a plan, and the peace of mind that came with it. And each Thursday she pulled out her watercolor set and painted, not for anyone else, but for the joy of it. None of these changes happened overnight. There was no magic moment, just small decisions, one after another, that slowly rewrote her story. Growing older wasn't the end. It was a new chapter. Margaret realized that aging didn't mean fading. It meant evolving. And with every step, call, brushstroke, or brave yes, she was reclaiming the life she still had. Not the one she used to live, but the one she could still shape, day by day. Because in the end, it's not about adding more years to your life. It's about adding more life to your years. And it's never too late to start. So as you move forward from today, ask yourself, what small step can I take to reclaim my health, my joy, or my purpose? Whether it's calling an old friend, signing up for a class, or simply going for a walk, each choice matters. Aging isn't about slowing down, it's about rising to meet life in new and meaningful ways. You still have stories to tell, laughter to share, and memories to make. The best may not be behind you, it might just be waiting around the corner. This isn't the end of your story, it's a powerful new beginning.